Now Rosemary took a photo of her dog, and let's just show you this. And Rosemary says, after all the emphasis you put on conveying stories in our images and seeing how much more impactful and memorable it makes them, I've been trying hard to look for story behind the image I take. Excellent. Well, I'm really glad you've been taking this idea on board, Rosemary. Now, the photo I'm submitting for critique this week is my attempt to convey story in a pet portrait. At first glance, the wire fencing of the pup's indoor playpen seems unfortunate, but it doesn't make for a pretty picture. But it really is part of the story, the way our pup uses his expression to try and guilt us into letting him out for a romp. Big puppy eyes, eh? I'm hoping the viewer does indeed convey I'm hoping the image does convey the story to the image, and I wonder if there's anything more I could do with the composition or post-processing to aid and abet his devious attempt at freedom. Okay, so I think a couple of things here that I'd like to talk about in terms of. First of all, yeah, it does kind of feel more like he's in a cage than a playpen. You've got the bars coming down. It's almost like that. You kind of go back to that original kind of person behind the bar, the jail shot that you have of, in old westerns, of sort of somebody standing behind the bars, the criminal sort of there behind. So it does look kind of like your puppy is in jail as such. In terms of emphasize, let me show you a couple of things in the editing this then. So let's open this in Photoshop again, and so a couple of things here are things that I've already talked about with some other photos, but worth repeating in the context. I mean, the first thing, I think actually this little bit of gap here, I don't know whether that's really necessary. I think you probably could pull that up a little bit, something like that, or even just, well, maybe a little touch more actually, because we don't need a full thick, something like that. So we've just got that sense of bar, we don't have the sense of the ground. Possibly. More importantly, I think if we go to the camera raw filter, and again, I think that notion of vignetting, what we're trying to do here, the big thing to remember here is what we're talking about is the eyes and the expression in the eyes. So this is where we want to draw our attention to. So if we take a vignette and just sort of start drawing that in a little bit like that, now I'll probably overemphasize it and just do it a bit heavier than it really needs, but just to kind of take it like that, then you can instantly see that that draws your attention to the face that much more. Okay, within this, I mean, other options might be, no, not that, I want to zoom in. If we've got highlights in the eyes, but we're wanting to try and emphasize the eyes a bit. So I'm going to I've got mid-tones 8% here. I'm on the dodge and burn. I'm going to dodge. So I'm going to just sort of lighten this up a little bit if I can. Is that? Yeah. Maybe have it slightly stronger, just for emphasis here. And then again with the other eye. So that really I'm sort of bringing out those reflections in the eyes to really sort of create much more. It will draw that much more attention into the eyes. So if you look at the difference between that and that, okay, well, for those who are on a smaller screen, the difference between that and that kind of brings more. Now, actually, when we're close in, it's maybe slightly overdone, but further back here, we've got a bit more. Now, the other thing I want to do is filter camera raw. We could play with the I'm going to use the clarity tool. It's kind of contrast thing, just kind of a little bit more. Essentially, it's kind of creating a little bit more light and shadow. Maybe it would work with the contrast. Okay, yeah. Now I like the contrast there, except for the fact that what's happening here is it's kind of getting the colours are getting overdone here. So maybe I would take down the saturation a little bit here, just to kind of counteract the fact that we've got. So now maybe just up that a little bit because we've got a little bit dark, something like that. Now the darker shadows is sort of kind of upping the mood a little bit. Now the other thing I want to point out here is to go back to Naria's photo right at the beginning, where I talked about where there was a lot of browns. That actually, if you're kind of more at that yellow end of the spectrum, if you can kind of introduce a blue end of the spectrum a little bit to counteract it, it quite often really brings it out. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to duplicate this layer, and I'm going to go back into camera raw here and just blue shift this a little bit, something like that. Now I blue shifted the whole lot, and that's maybe too far, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a mask, and I'm going to essentially paint back in, let's go put that, the fur that we had. Now actually at this point kind of looks almost overdone again, so what I can do is I can just take that down a little bit, or even, no, that's the wrong way. Okay, let's put a white on there and take that down, say something like 20%, and just take a little bit of that back out. So we've got, and I think at this point what it does is we've now got, because the metal's getting a little bit bluish, this background's getting a little bit bluish, it sort of creates a contrast between the warm browns of the puppy and the background as well, kind of slightly cooler surroundings, which again kind of emphasizes a case of the warm puppy stuck in a sort of slightly cooler environment. So this is the way you can kind of play with it. So if I select all that, copy, paste, so that this is our final kind of edit, and we compare it to the original. This is a much softer photo. This then is a kind of harder photo, I suppose, maybe making more sense of the bars behind it, but the emphasis on the idea of the trapped animal, perhaps, or the animal that feels like it's just kind of, the world is being terrible to me, how could you be such terrible owners, locking me up like this in a pitiful jail, you know, surely you need to, how else can I guilt you into taking me out for a run. So if that's a story, so just going on the story that you were talking about, hopefully that gives you some ideas of just how you can edit the photo to emphasize that kind of story for it. So hope that helps, Rosemary.